What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Kirsten Potenza, CEO and founder of Pound, the Rockout Workout. You're listening to The Big Green Couch, where I sit down with noisemakers across various industries to discuss different topics, to bring new ideas, fresh perspectives, and practical tips to you, our community. Let's get started. Welcome to this episode of The Big Green Couch. We are in the middle of March and we've been celebrating so many badass women in music. And today we have the lovely Catherine Marks, who is a Melbourne-born, London-based, award-winning producer, mixer, and engineer. With over 15 years in the industry, Catherine won MPG Breakthrough Producer of the Year in 2016, MPG Producer of the Year in 2018, and Heavy Music Awards Producer of the Year in 2020. She produced and mixed Wolf Alice Grammy-nominated Moaning Lisa Smile, mixed Grammy Award-winning album Mass Education by St. Vincent, one of our faves, and has produced and mixed 5 top 10 UK albums. Working with UK, US, and Australian artists, Catherine's credits include albums for The Wombats, Manchester Orchestra, The Amazons, St. Vincent, Alanis Morissette, Frank Turner, The Big Moon, Palace, Wolf Alice, Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes, Foals, Sunset Sons, The Mysterines, Paris Jackson, EOB, Mr. Hudson, PJ Harvey, and Interpol, to just name a few. We are so excited to sit down with Catherine. Please welcome her to the Big Green Couch. Thank you for joining us. We have a girl on our team, Courtney, who put together all of our badass behind the music features, and she is so excited to have you. She did so much research, and it was so cool to get that interaction with you after our posts, and I am excited to learn more about you and your story. Everything I've read so far is so inspiring. So thank you for joining us today on the Big Green Couch.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So I like to start out with a very easy question. Actually, probably not an easy question, but how are you? It's been an intense last 12 months. How are you? How are you feeling? How is life? How is your heart? All the good stuff.
Oh man, it has been a very interesting 12 months. Just I've been working lots, weirdly, but by myself. I've obviously relationships failed and started and stopped, and just some crazy kind of different, very different experience the past 12 months, that is for sure.
I mean, I have to absolutely agree with you, and it's interesting. Anybody who is in an industry that relies on other people, whether it's just simply human connection or it's through instruction or your line of work, which I imagine the creative process I'm sure there's a lot of individual work that you do and work that you do alone, but I also imagine there's a lot of collaborative work within the creative process. So I can't imagine what the last year has probably been like for you, which we can certainly get into more later on. But before we get into what you're currently doing, I always like to start at the beginning. I know it's kind of cliche, but I think our childhood stories and our upbringing is, first of all, I'm always kind of obsessed with hearing it because I think it's always very revealing to what we end up doing or not doing in life. So I would love to hear more about your upbringing. Where did you grow up? And what that experience was like for you.
I grew up in Melbourne in Australia, and and I moved over to London in 2005 to kind of do what I was doing. But I went to school in Melbourne. I studied architecture after school, and I guess was a very sensitive child.
Mm-hmm.
I had lots of friends, but I think I was quite tall from a very young age. So I think even though I was bigger than everyone else, I was probably uh, seen to be a bit tougher, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but wasn't really. It wasn't. I don't think until I was sort of 16 that kind of I stopped caring or worrying about what other people thought. Yeah, being tall was. I mean, it's great now, but I remember as a kid, definitely in primary school, kind of all the other girls were really cute and I was not. I felt bigger and maybe I felt like I had to sort of be more mature or I was also a bit of a nerd. I really loved school and I liked getting good grades and I was very focused on that. I don't think I was particularly cool. um,
Those are usually the ones that become cooler later on in life.
well, I don't know. I'm still working on that. But yeah, I mean, this is obviously all in hindsight, and I mean, I definitely have fond memories growing up. My parents were very supportive and encouraged me to kind of pursue my 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 different interests.
Mm-hmm.
They, I think they kind of they never tried to make me conform to be a particular way.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, So yeah, I mean, all this sort of stuff I think has definitely contributed to kind of where I've ended up.
So you said something at the age of 16 you stopped caring. I think that's pretty powerful because I think it takes a lot of people their whole life to stop caring, as in
Oh, it's definitely come in waves, but I just
what
I d
what caused the first wave?
I had this wonderful friend called Zoe Broughton, and I think maybe I was 15, and I remember I went to an all girls school, so it was sort of very very cliquey, and girls can be quite mean.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember after art class one day, I think I said to her, why do girls not like me or something or what why do they, and she said something like it's because you seem so depressed all the time. And I mean, I'm pretty sure those were her words, and whatever, she obviously said it with love and kindness, and was just, it was kind of the brutal truth. I think
Mm,
maybe I was maybe quiet or felt like no one liked me or something, so
mm-hmm.
therefore kind of withdrew. And I guess from that moment on, I was like, oh my God, she's right. I've kind of created the situation where, in order for them to not like me, when perhaps that wasn't the case. I don't know. Also, no one really cares what other people are thinking because they're so sort of caught up in their own stuff. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I remember that kind of being a turning point for me. She was a very good friend.
That I mean, I think that is such a beautiful story. I recently posted the 7 principles of manifesting by Deepak, and I think one of them was understanding, or it was evolving through the mirror of relationship, and it got me really thinking about the power of the people who are around you and what a blessing a honest friend is,
Yeah.
and having people like that in your life even at such a young age. I mean, I think that's pretty powerful,
She
and such
was
a cool moment.
Yeah, she was such a great friend. We used to I She lived around the corner from me, and I used to go around to her house and we'd have cups of tea and smoke, no, which was very bad. Uh, and um, and we called it workshopping, which was basically we kind of dissected, everything that was going on in our lives and analyzed everything, and and made each other laugh, and uh, yeah, she,
Wow.
that's sort of really taken me back.
I love that. Are you still friends with her?
Yes, I am. I'm still very good
That's
friends with her.
incredible. Workshopping.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, everybody who's listening, I feel like what a beautiful friendship and what a beautiful way of looking at life, even at that age, coming together with your friends to talk through um, your life and really look at it. It sounds I was a sociology major. It sounds very much like many of my classes in college. So that's so cool that you were doing that at such a young age.
Yeah.
Did you know what you wanted to be or do at that age? I find that so many people either know at a young age, they're headstrong, they're going to do it. And then other people are, might have different passions, but it takes them a little bit longer in life. Did you know?
I mean, I actually don't remember. I mean, I know that I wanted to, for music to be involved in whatever it was that
Hmm.
I did, but the at that time there was kind of no clear path to like what one could do in the music industry, or I composed a lot of music for orchestra and when I was at school, and I loved doing that. But that wasn't sort of a career option, and I got I got the grades to get into architecture. I really loved maths and science and art, so I think that was where I was heading. But I wasn't sort of like necessarily passionate about it. It was something that seemed like a kind of uh,
Like a
obvious.
good next step. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
exactly.
sure a lot of people can relate to that. Was it something that after school you became more passionate about, or did you go through kind of going through the motions and feeling like it was a good career path and feel less passionate about it?
It's so weird thinking back, because I'm sure at the time, I mean, I was thinking I would be an architect. I definitely loved studying it. There was a lot of theory involved, which I really enjoyed. A lot of history. I really loved studying architecture.
Mm-hmm.
So I was definitely passionate about that. The design aspect of it was such a tiny part of it. I mean, a big part of it, but such a tiny part of it. I mean, I know that
Mm-hmm.
I had fun, and there was always a lot of deadlines, and we all my friends we were taking cold and flu tablets to kind of make us stay awake for weeks at a time. I remember one kid had a car accident because he hadn't slept in 6 days on his way to a presentation. I mean, it was that kind of level of insanity. But
Mm-hmm.
the how I mean, God, it was hell at the time. But I look back on those days with a lot of fondness, and it makes me smile. And there was definitely a real community amongst all the students, and God, it was it was it was a really fun time. I made some really good friends, and I mean, they're all. One of my friends has sort of gone on to be a very successful architect. In fact, all of them have, and are doing very well. Um, there was one group. There was a group of guys who they lived in a warehouse. I think it was in Footscray in Melbourne, and we called it the Testosterone because there was six of them, and there was no actual rooms. They'd sort of constructed the rooms within the warehouse out of like blocks, and they basically designed the sort of individual spaces, and it was over a couple of levels, and they used to have the best parties ever.
That's awesome.
Um, so yeah, there was lots of fun things that went on there. Sorry, I'm just remembering now. So these are good questions.
If we've learned anything right in the last 12 months, we move through life so quickly that I think so many things are forgotten, and it's why would you think of those, and why would somebody ask you other than in a in a podcast, right?
Yeah.
um it's incredible. I'm glad that it's bringing up good memories, and I think that's such a powerful thing. And I'm like envisioning the testosterone dome in my head, um, as like the opposite of a frat, like the most gorgeous, like designed space. But I'm not sure that's what it was.
I just remember you sort of entered. There was a car park at the bottom, and then you came up on the first floor, and there was a very large double-heighted kind of kitchen dining area. But in order, you passed there kind of a couple of little makeshift bedrooms. I'm sure there was some real bedrooms there, but maybe they, because there was so many of them, maybe they had to make a few more. And then there was another level, and then on the top level was sort of a very large open space, and then that opened up onto a deck, and they usually had the parties there. There was one party that they had where we covered all the walls with brown paper, and I spent the night. I mean, there were hundreds of people there. Like one of the guys DJ'd, or they all DJ'd, or I mean, they were. It was very. They were kind of sophisticated parties, but also not particularly sophisticated. Yeah, and I traced everyone that was in the party. So by the end of the night, all this very large space covered with brown paper was filled with kind of the outlines of everyone at the party, and really kind of tall, high ceilings. So it was floor to ceiling.
Okay, so parties that I wish that I had gone to in college. Also, I mean, for anybody who's listening, what a great post-COVID party idea. So if we ever have to go back, we have all the tracings of our friends in our house.
Yeah.
You went from a master's degree in architecture to producing rock albums.
Hmm.
Huge, huge switch. Maybe not. Um, I have a feeling that when you look at the underpinnings of producing and architecture, there's probably a lot of similarities. But what was the moment where you knew you wanted to pursue making music, and maybe more even maybe even more important, where you knew you could, because it sounds like earlier on it didn't seem like a possibility. Where and when did it become one?
Well, even when I started working in the music industry, it wasn't an obvious thing then either. Because when I first moved over to London from Australia, I was making tea in a studio. I was essentially a runner, and you kind of work your way up. So I was a runner for or assistant to a producer called Flood, um, who kind of gave me the initial opportunity. And then I started engineering and assisting it, and I assisted for a mixer called Alan Moulder. I assisted for a lot of different producers, but it wasn't sort of until I assisted for Alan Moulder, who's a mix engineer and producer, but predominantly mixes these days. Uh, he was like, just imagine you're a mixer now. I think definitely when I walked through the doors on my first day in June 14th, 2005, I think it was, um, uh, I thought, oh, I'm going to be producing records straight off the bat, but that was absolutely not the case. I mean, it sort of took me nearly 10 years to kind of be comfortable producing, and then I sort of fell into that after working for this mix engineer, Alan. I think I'd mixed a project for a band, and on their next project they wanted me to have a go at producing. And um, how did that happen? I think the turning point was I engineered for Alan and Flood. They co-produced an album called Holy Fire by a band called Foals. And after that project, I went and had a load of meetings at record labels, because I'd sort of finally felt really confident about what I was doing, and I just kind of wanted. I mean, a lot of record labels kind of knew who I was. I was the only girl who was doing it, so it was pretty easy to kind of stand out. But I wanted to just show my face, uh, and let them know that, I guess I was interested.
Mhm.
And uh, yeah, and I think I went into a record label called Fiction, which is a part of Universal, and Jim Chancellor, who is the head of Fiction, had I'd known him since I had been assisting, so I'd known him for many years, or I'd seen him around and said hello, uh, and he gave me kind of my first ever proper production for a major label. Um, and then it sort of just came from there. But the initial thing of producing, uh, yeah, I think I just sort of fell into that.
You were the only woman doing this.
Hmm.
Um, and listen,
At
I
at
really hope
at the time,
at the time,
yes.
yeah. I I really hope someday, very, very soon, that the question I'm about to ask is obsolete because there will be proper representation in the music industry, in all industries. Um, but can you tell me a little bit more about your journey as a female producer and any challenges you might have faced? I can imagine that, I mean, both architecture and music and many other industries, unfortunately, there is a lack of representation, and I would imagine it makes it a little bit more difficult to grow when you don't have a role model, so you can't see yourself in
Hmm.
an industry because there simply isn't somebody like you there. And potentially other people can't see you there either. Did you come across any issues like that or face any challenges?
I was very lucky, I think, one, in my perspective on things, and two, because of the kind of mentors that I had. I I never saw it like that. It was very competitive, even amongst the boys. And I just, I mean, I wasn't particularly good at it at the start, but I knew I wanted to be. So I worked really hard and was as nice and lovely and accommodating as possible. But I was very aware. I mean, at pretty much every session, someone would say, "Oh, you don't see many women," or "You're the only woman I've ever seen in the studio," or stuff like
Hmm.
that. I mean, I took that as yes, I have a
Yeah,
way. I have like a
absolutely.
point of difference. I have a way to stand out. But it was. I mean, yeah, there were times when it sort of felt quite lonely and isolating, but that's also the nature of the job. I think. I mean, I remember I mean, this is such a one-off thing. I remember where I wore. I started to wear sort of like really daggy clothes, very nothing
Hmm.
provocative. Um, that's interesting. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was less about like my sexuality and more about I didn't feel like I was very good at what I did, so I kind of wanted to be invisible until I knew I felt like I kind of owned the situation. My personality
Hmm.
changed a lot in the early stages because, uh, I guess it was like being in the army. I felt like I was kind of being broken down to be built back up. It's a very unique discipline. So yeah, there was a period where I sort of cut off my hair and I was wearing boys kind of like just very baggy clothes. And I remember recording drums up on a mezzanine, and this one producer. I mean, he was very old, but he was coming down the ladder of the mezzanine. He said, "I can see down your top," and I never took it um, as something sexual, more as like him stating a fact. But it
Hmm.
made me sort of feel self-conscious. But I mean, that was literally the only kind of time, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, and it didn't even make me feel uncomfortable. Maybe it did. I can't really remember. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like there's so much to unpack with what you just said. I'll start with one thing that stood out to me, and it's something I think about a lot because of I won't ask your age, but I think we're around the same age. And when I grew up in my first couple of jobs, it was always that sense of being broken down to be built up again. And I feel like that doesn't exist as much anymore because sometimes that's a very harsh experience. I liken it to a restaurant where the chef is doing the same thing, and you kind of outwardly could see it. You could see it on television shows, and that happened to me. And when I look back, I am so grateful for those experiences. I didn't feel good through them. I didn't feel good about myself through them, but there was so, I don't know, it put thick skin on me, and it made me able to deal with harder things in life and really stand up for myself later in life. And I know there's a lot of controversy with people within their jobs going through similar experiences. I'd love to hear your opinion on it because we've obviously lived through it, and I absolutely understand why parts of it are controversial, but I personally wouldn't take any of it back. Um,
I mean, I feel the same. Uh, I, I'm the producer that I am today because of those experiences, as horrific as they were at the time. I mean, I'm pretty sure there was
yeah,
a period of time where I cried every day in the bathroom,
yeah,
but uh, but it's made me so much tougher and stronger, and that especially when you're working with bands. So there's a lot of people in the room, and you're dealing with record labels and management. Everyone's under a lot of pressure and
lots of opinions.
lots of opinions, and you're managing expectations and emotions, and you kind of have to take yourself out of the equation. And I think by sort of going through all that experience, that's kind of allowed me to deal with that stuff better.
Hmm.
Although I did a podcast, or I was interviewed by a young guy the other day actually, and he was he was a lot younger, and we were talking about, he wanted to talk a lot about the kind of early days of being an assistant, and I was sort of describing something similar, and he said, "Do you think that's right?" And I said, "Well, I guess I wouldn't necessarily treat people that way." Uh, and I guess I vowed not to, but but it but it's also been very beneficial to me.
Yeah.
So I'm not. I'm sure I complained about it a lot at one point, but that the kind of the the sort of terribleness of it has definitely dissipated because of now the success that I've had. It's obviously a result of all my experiences. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's tricky because yeah, things have changed. I mean, it's been 15 years.
Hmm.
Um, Even as I was starting, things were changing, and um, but still, it was a while away before the kind of traditional style of the studio assistant engineer producer relationship changed. So yeah, I don't know.
It's such a layered question and a conversation that could probably go on for hours. I think at the end of the day, anybody who's lived through that kind of what I'll call an upbringing, whether that be in life or in your career, you often question, was earning my stripes. I mean, I think we feel confident that the experience of earning your stripes made you who you are today, but is that the way that it has to be, and does it result in you know the success that you have found, that many people have found? I could argue in one direction, but I think over the course of the next 15 to 20 years we'll probably see that, right?
Yeah.
Another thing that came up that I thought was really interesting is I think things that are going on in our lives, especially emotionally, affect us in every way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big believer in listening to your body. I think if, I remember back in the day when pounds started, I would get these like my scalp would hurt and I would be like, what is going on? And it was stress that was causing that. And even the reflection of how we dress and how we present ourselves to the world, all of these things come out, they seep out even when we don't want them to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this idea that you were kind of dressing or representing yourself in the way in which you believed you were or should be. And you said something, a lot of that changed over the course of the years. What was it that changed? What caused it? And how did you see that reflected in the way you express yourself?
I think that the shift from kind of, wearing the inconspicuous outfits in the studio. I mean, also that was a practical thing because I was doing a lot of crawling around and plugging things in and getting dusty or, whatever. I think the turning point for me was when I started working with Alan Moulder, because by that point I'd had a lot of experience working under producers and engineers. I kind of I knew what I was really good at and I knew what I needed to learn. So I had a lot more confidence, and he instilled a lot of confidence in me. The way
Mm,
he treated the people that worked for him was, you are part of my team, and the way we present ourselves to our clients, the artists, is we are a team. If I'm going to berate you, it's going to be, behind closed doors. No one's going to see that.
mhm,
So that made me feel respected and uh, and and confident, I guess. So it was then that I started to kind of wear tight jeans and high heeled boots, and we'd have
mhm,
dress up Fridays, um, and taking a bit more pride in my appearance, and
mm,
also seeing, uh, there the way you present yourself, how you are treated as well, is makes a difference. Um, so, I mean, yeah, I was still quite young and still kind of learning all this stuff, really.
mhm.
Um, a lot of what we do is it's to do with psychology, and I guess the way you dress and present yourself has everything to do with that as
Yeah.
well.
Again, probably a topic that could go on for hours. I just am, I'm a big believer in it's 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 a little bit of a gray area, right? I don't think we should present ourselves or dress for other people, but I also think there is a level of respect that when you have for yourself, you present yourself in a certain way. And I just immediately thought of the last 12 months where most of us around the world have been in sweatpants and how good it feels when you just, put a nice outfit on, even when you're not presenting yourself to anybody else. And you can feel a very large difference. And I think there's something to be said about that.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I think the way I presented myself had everything to do with the way I was starting to feel.
yeah,
I'm currently
that's
in
great.
yoga pants right now.
Yeah, it's w the I my, like, 99% of my closet hasn't been used,
Yeah.
but we'll get there. So, for our listeners that may not know the ins and outs of what you do, can you explain exactly what producing is?
Oh, I'm never good at explaining exactly what a producer is, but I guess uh, I work with artists and bands, and we work in the studio. And I guess I'm the person who kind of directs the performance, or tries to get the best performance out of them, really. I suck at explaining what it is that I
No,
do.
it's so funny. I've said this so many times when people are like, "What is pound?" I'm like, you think you would be the best person to
Yeah.
explain it, but it's something that's like just lives within you sometimes is hard to describe. I always think of a producer like, yeah, like an orchestrator, but you're also, and this is something I don't know, when you're going in, are you choosing, the engineer, or is that all picked before?
Right. Well, so I can give you an example of kind of an average process for me.
That would be awesome.
So, for example, I've just worked with a band called the Mysterines, who are awesome. Um, and because of lockdown, we weren't able to do pre-production. But what we would normally do is before we even head into the studio, we'd go into a rehearsal space and run through all the songs. Basically, I'd get them to play them. Part of that is so I can get to understand the way that they play, how they kind of interact with each other. Also, learn more about them. It's we're getting to know each other, becoming more comfortable with each other, so that the
Hmm.
communicate, making them feel comfortable, so that the communication between us can be more free and open. And then I usually sort of break down the songs, and I actually focus a lot on drum groove. I'm not a drummer at all, and I have ridiculously one artist I worked with said I have the rhythm of a birthday cake. I think that's him referring to me, kind of the way that I move. But I mean, drum groove is very important to me, and making kind of all the elements work and support the other parts that exist. So whether it's like a vocal phrasing, the way where kind of the vocals land on the beat, and do the drums support that? Um, like looking at the kick drum pattern and the snare pattern, where the cymbals hit and what kind of cymbals we're going to play. And is it a hi-hat part or is it a tom part? I mean, a lot of this stuff is already written, so it's deconstructing it almost just to make tiny little tweaks so that everything sort of feels and sits better, all to support whatever the song is kind of trying to convey. And then
Hmm.
I sort of look at guitar parts, and do we need to add synth? Do we need, what else do we need to do? Kind of coming up with like a little game plan, basically, of what we would do in the studio. And then for years, I engineered stuff that I produced as well. Um, so the sonic side is, or aspect of it, is very important to me, because that the sonics kind of create the mood, I guess. So it's things like how roomy are the drums going to be, or how, what are the textures and the colors that we want? Do we want this to sound dark or really bright, or do we want it to feel muscular or gentle, or sort of all these kind of adjectives? And that's the way we present the song has to do with ultimately the sonics, because we're listening to it.
Hmm.
So then once we're in the studio, I try and make the that process when we come into the studio kind of an extension of rehearsal. So while we're kind of dialing in sounds and stuff, the bands are playing together live. This is specific to the Mysterines. I wanted to kind of capture really live performances, because they're
Mm.
such great players. I've actually just mixed something where and Alan is was in the building, and he's mixing some of the tracks for me for the album. And he said I didn't really do much to the mix. And he was like, God, it's so kind of refreshing to hear. Like, he goes, I can hear the sound of the room.
Mm.
It sounds like a live band. There's so much energy to it. And I'm like, okay, well, great. So it sort of might not sound perfect, but it has something, there's a feeling there, which is kind of
Yeah.
ultimately what I'm looking for. So yeah, so then when we're in the studio, yeah, I'm trying to uh, get the performance out of them that makes me sort of jump up and feel something. And it's those things are kind of intangible, but
Hmm.
instinctively it's trying to create the right atmosphere, or making sure what they're listening to is inspiring a particular performance. You know, do they need to get it so perfect that then where they can start making mistakes, or is it the very first take that they do, which is like so kind of fresh and energetic because they're just so excited to start playing the song, but there's loads of mistakes, and does that matter? So it's all those kind of decisions, and then like, you know, just the basics of how does the snare drum sound, which is usually what I kind of get obsessed about.
That made me so happy to hear. Um, I mean, at Pound, we're kind of obsessed with the science around how beat and rhythm and in our case drumming have physiological effects on us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so cool to hear that the thoughtfulness of the end goal. How do you want make people feel?
Mm.
And that's what it is about music that I love so much. The reason why Pound began was because I was working at a music venue where we had a different genre of music night every night. And I would just watch people overcome with emotion, happiness, joy, sadness. And you can recall some of your greatest or worst memories and align them with a song so
Mm-hmm.
many times. And so just envisioning what happens, within a studio and the work that's put in to make sure that that feeling is there is it's just really cool to hear, uh, and makes me happy because music makes me happy.
That's great to hear. That's good.
Also, I'm all for live recordings, and I think that the best things come out of mistakes, and I'm sure you've experienced that. And just I've watched enough, documentaries and read enough about music to know that back in the day when things weren't so technical and you couldn't tweak, every tiny piece of a song, that's where all the special stuff,
Mm.
seeps out.
Yeah.
Okay, very hard question.
Mm.
And so I'm not gonna directly ask it, but what was your favorite song or album, or maybe just a memory, that you've had so far? Um, yeah, maybe it is a song, maybe it is an album, maybe it was a day in the studio. I don't know.
Of stuff that I've worked on,
Yeah.
my favorite. Uh, I don't really. I mean, they're all kind of my favorite. My first memory of stuff just finally kind of coming together and feeling like I've done an awesome job was working on a track called Moaning Lisa's Smile by Wolf Alice. That was a really kind of tough, uh, again, very early days of me producing. And it was also the first song that we recorded in the session, and it just wasn't feeling right. It wasn't coming together. We moved on to another song, came back to it, and I just remember it feeling bloody awesome. And the band were, I mean, we were dancing around, just like drinking champagne. We were so excited about it. Um, and it was sort of one of those things where I had butterflies in my tummy about how good it
Mm.
was, like almost objectively, like this feels amazing. How did I don't even know how we got there, but it just feels so amazing. And it went on to be nominated for a Grammy. um, so there was obviously something good about that. But
Yeah.
it was my first kind of moment of, oh, okay, I'm not that bad at this. This is a this feels like success in terms
Mm.
of this makes me feel something so amazing. I can't even pinpoint what it is. Uh, but this has something special, and I was a part of that. And there've been many moments like that since, but that was kind of my first.
The first big one.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing that.
that's okay.
At Pound, we call ourselves fitness rebels,
Mhm.
and to us, what it really means is it's being fearless enough to just be yourself, which is a difficult thing to do sometimes, although it seems like it wouldn't. Um, is there a time that your rebelliousness kind of kicked in, and how did it serve you? Or have you felt like, I don't know, I feel like there's probably many stories, but does one stand out in particular where you were rebellious and it really served you or your career or your personal life?
I think I don't know. I mean, I guess the way that I record is particularly uh, it's not particularly conventional in that I was not very technical, or the technical aspect of engineering never
Mhm.
really interested me. So, getting things correct. Uh, the correct settings, I use that in inverted commas. Um, so, I the way I sort of learnt was when you're kind of dialing sounds in, uh, I didn't understand what the bits of equipment were doing. I just knew what I wanted to hear. So a lot of that was with trial and error. But I also kind of learnt from some maverick producers who would, stick a microphone in a cupboard, and that was how we recorded a particular instrument. Or yeah, so just sort of doing things that were kind of a bit random, um, to get sounds that were interesting and exciting, not correct, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Oh, it does.
So that was kind of I guess that was more out of necessity than a conscious decision. Um, because I didn't really know what I was doing. I still don't really know what I'm doing. But there was also a period. I mean, I kind of also just fell into guitar music too. I mean, that was definitely not a conscious decision to kind of work in that area, or work with rock and roll. But the sort of the punk ethos and the rock and roll ethos is, you're sort of picking up your instrument and you don't give a shit, if I'm allowed to say that. Um, and that feeling of like you're playing something for the first time. There's something so free about it. Um, Not to have the feeling of, again, this is correct or this is perfect, or um, I guess. I mean, I guess I'm a rebel in that, I mean, this is a very sort of nerdy technical thing, but the mix that I currently am working on, uh, I'm slamming the interface so that it's in the red, and the mix bus compressor is like really pumping, and they're just not the ways that you should do stuff, but it felt really good. So that's kind of what I've done on just the most recent mix. Yeah. It's not like that all the time, but it kind of just worked. So,
No, you're speaking our language. Also, I'm really glad we're not on video because I just made the most dorky face, I think. I like that just made me so excited and I had the largest smile on my face. I'm also sitting in my car recording this, so if anybody is looking at me right now, they're probably wondering what I'm doing. No, that made me so happy. That's part of our ethos at
mhm,
Pound, which is um, mistakes are what makes us, and doing things the unconventional way is what we're all about. I mean, drumming and exercising um, together in general are quite weird, but they work.
mhm,
Um, so I have a question that I think you're going to be able to answer, and it came to my mind this morning because what we do at Pound is we find music, and historically we've tried to find music and artists that were up and coming that people didn't know about yet, because that's usually the good stuff. And it was always exciting to bring in a song and choreograph to it, and months later to have it pop up as the number one song.
mhm,
And So every single month we release tracks, which is 3 different songs that are choreographed. So our instructors have to learn the choreography. And before Pound, I knew nothing about, 8 counts, which is how we structure our choreography.
Uh-huh.
Um, and we created a language called pound pods,
Mm.
and pound pods look like music notes.
Mhm.
And one pod will cover, for example, 2 8 counts of a certain technique with a certain strike pattern. So, how many times you're hitting the ground with what technique you're doing for how long. This is a language that we created and that not any other format in the world has. So a lot of the questions that I get from instructors is how do I learn quickly? How do I really, look at sheet music or look at the visual because we have videos
Uh-huh.
and soak it up and absorb it so that what I'm teaching it becomes um easy and it flows. And I think the answer to that to me is always you got to get to know the music.
Yeah.
And we try to find music that has somewhat straightforward structure. When the song is so good and it doesn't have a clear structure, I'll use it because the song is so good.
Mhm.
But um, I'd love to hear from you if there's ways in which that they can absorb music or pay closer attention to it so that when they're teaching, they can hear all the changes and because everything is usually, one technique is on the verse and the next technique is on the chorus.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I think sort of without knowing exactly the language, it's perhaps hard for me. Also, the fact that the way I digest music is also very different from someone who doesn't work in music, perhaps. I mean, it's
Mm.
so
Mhm.
the days when I listen to music purely for enjoyment, stuff that I'm not working on, they're kind of rare. I love those days, but they're rare. Um,
We call that the ear cleanse
yeah.
day at Pound.
Yeah, I need one of those. Um, that is a very good question. I mean, I guess, yeah, that's interesting because when I listen to stuff that like, there's a playlist on Spotify. I've been talking a lot about it recently. I don't know whether it's cool or dorky, but it's called "Walk Like a Badass." You guys would probably love it. It's like
I love it.
stuff that it's sort of at like, a good kind of walking pace, fast walking pace music. But it's rock and roll. It is badass. Um, but a lot of it is the stuff that I've kind of never worked, I've not worked on. So I don't know, I'm not listening to the structure of the song. I'm kind of walking to the beat, I guess. And everyone feels the beats in different ways. Like some people might walk to the snare, some people might walk to the vocal, some people might walk to the kick drum, depending on what is the thing that you're feeling. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes when you tap a
Absolutely.
song to a song, it's all within the kind of, beats per minute
Mhm.
framework. But um, so yeah, I mean, I guess how do you what with your what did you call them again?
They're called pound pods.
Yeah. So
Um,
what what are you referencing per pod?
so yeah, there I know in music it's 8 counts in the pound pods and we actually call a full sheet music.
Mhm.
But I think what you just said is one of the things that and it's funny you brought up walking. It's the bit of advice I always give everybody. It's don't listen to the music while trying to remember the choreography. Just listen to the music.
Mm.
Put it on in your car. Put it on when you're walking your dog, so that it becomes this intuitive experience. So that when you then layer, choreography on top of it, the song so well and the feeling of the song and
Mhm.
the changes in the song that it becomes that much easier to remember.
Yeah, because that's I mean, that's there you go. That's good advice. I guess it's got to feel kind of innate and intuitive, doesn't it? Yeah, like feeling the music rather than
Yeah.
like breaking it down. So your body is moving kind of without you thinking about it.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Which is hard
Yep.
to do when, especially when teaching, because we another thing that I built into Pound that I feel very passionate about is that the music should lead. In a lot of classes, you'll find the instructor speaking a lot, and we kind of lead our instructors to speak less and allow the music to speak,
Mhm.
because when you can hear it, and you can feel it, you as a student are also going to be able to intuitively pick up the movements, pick up the beats and the strike patterns. But it is difficult when you're speaking and you're moving and you're also thinking about choreography all at once. Um, but yeah, the more it becomes something that is intuitive, I think the easier it is to teach. So find, what's the playlist?
Walk like a badass.
I have to. We'll probably get some song inspiration from that.
Yeah, you totally will.
Okay, I have a question. On your ear cleanse day, what are you listening to?
Oh, it varies. Sometimes I like listening to kind of classical or opera I mean, at the moment I'm listening to the Walk Like a Badass. So trying to listen to music that makes me feel powerful and empowered. Um, so yeah, listening to badass rock and roll, heavy guitars, which is so weird because I work on that kind of music, but I don't normally listen to that. I mean, I've got a bunch of records at home. I love, uh, eh, sometimes I like listening to Tom Waits or
Mm,
um, Paul Simon or I don't know,
yeah.
Crosby, Stills and Nash, stuff like that.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I'm listening to some heavy rock at the moment.
I think this is funny statement that we say all the time, but I think music can be your best friend, and it will get you through a breakup. It'll get you through a bad day. It'll put a smile on your face or tears in your eyes. Like, not many things are as powerful as music.
Mm-mm.
So I'm glad you have that with you right now.
Thanks.
Okay, so because we do look for, up and coming artists, and I love, one of my most favorite pastimes is just searching through, whether it's Spotify or a record store, and just finding artists that I've never heard before.
Mm.
I remember finding like Dr. Dog 10 years ago and being like, what is this? This is so good. And it's something that, my husband and I listen to this day. So with that said, can you share 5 artists that maybe our community does not know about that is just really good listening?
Oh man.
And they could be artists that you've worked with, because you've worked with incredible artists. Some we all know, a few that we might not, that are really amazing.
I mean, you should definitely check out Manchester Orchestra, and we did an album end of 2019, beginning of 2020. And obviously it was supposed to be released last year, but being released in on April 30th. But they've just released the first single called Bedhead, which is banging. That's is it their 6th album? Yeah, their 6th album, and I did their 5th album as well. But
Where are they from?
Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
Um,
Awesome.
but yeah, I mean, I mean, they have like hardcore fans, but I think this record is kind of really, people are definitely going to know about them now. Um,
You heard it here first.
I mean, people do know who they are. It's just, maybe the broader community
Mm-hmm.
And the drums on that are really cool on that whole record. But specifically check out Bedhead. You asked for 5. This is so hard. Let me check out my Walk Like a Badass playlist. Hold on. Because there was a song that, I mean, maybe sometimes I'm really late to the party on stuff. I don't even know how to pronounce this, but there's a song called Dead Weight. Seize the Power by Yonica. Have you heard of Yonica?
I haven't.
They're a British band. They're really cool. And there's a song on there called Seize the Power. They produced that themselves and released that themselves, I think.
Wow. I'm going to look that up.
I can email you the names if you like.
That would be amazing.
The Mysterines, they're a band. Yonica I haven't worked with, but the Mysterines I'm working with, and also a female lead singer. Yonica is female-led. To Leah is the lead singer of the Mysterines, and she's super badass. This is so hard. I don't know how to pronounce this, but there's another song on the Walk Like a Badass playlist. It's called Dead Weight, and the artist is spelled Pvris.
Oh yeah, that's a Pound artist.
Is it? Have you heard that song Dead Weight?
Yes, I have. I know you're talking about.
That song is like, but I put that on when I want to feel powerful.
Yes, I love that.
and let go. But I mean, it's again like this is sort of brand new for me. I haven't this kind of lockdown, I don't know, getting through stuff experience and using music to do that, because I've been working in music for so long. You know, my escape is usually something completely different, but you know, there hasn't. Music has definitely been my escape.
So cool. Well, thank you for that. We'll probably like link out a list or something so everybody can check out that playlist and the artists that you mentioned, because finding new music is, like I said, my favorite.
You should. Well, okay, I've got one more for you. I've worked with this band as well. They're called the Amazons, and one of my favorite tracks that I did with them on their first record, and the song is called Black Magic. But also listen to a song called Doubt It, which is also really cool. And Mother, all those 3 songs. But Black Magic is killer.
We're gonna make a Catherine Marks playlist.
Black Magic has like a really long guitar solo in it. It's epic. It's amazing. It's so perverse. I love it.
Today's gonna be so much better now. Thank you so much for spending time with us today and sharing probably what will be an epic new playlist for Pound. Your story is really, really inspiring, and so many things came up today that I know I'm going to think about for hours and days after this. So thank you, and thank you for being such a badass.
Thank you.
We all are obsessed with you.
Thank you so much, and thanks for finding me and including me, and yeah, I feel very honored. I can't wait to do a class.
Yes, we'll have to get you in either a virtual or physical one soon. And speaking of finding you, where can our community find you?
On Instagram at CJ Marks. My Twitter account was hacked and recently, and it's deleted all my followers and all the people that I follow. And I've asked Twitter to give them back, but they haven't. I don't know what happened. So, I mean, Twitter is the same at CJ Marks. So yes, that's where you can find me and all my details. I do have a website, but there's details on my Instagram for that as well.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and hopefully we will meet in person one day.
I hope so too. I hope I can see your face one day.
Yes.
But this was really fun. Thank you, and great questions.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Big Green Couch. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on either iTunes or Spotify, and to follow us on Instagram at The Big Green Couch.